So here we are. This is our first edition of Reloading Room Confessions. And I'm here with David Christian. Say hi, David.
Hello, hello.
David is one of the team members of Borden Brooks Lapua. Who else?
The U.S. Rifle Team.
U.S. Rifle Team. For what it's worth, there's just a few of his accomplishments. I've been fortunate enough to watch him win most of those. And, David's one of those guys that it's hard to not want to emulate. Incredibly focused. You come from a history of Ironmans, right?
Yeah, I ran Ironman for a decade, and my body finally told me that I had enough. So I took that OCD and put it into shooting, and here we are 5 years later.
Yeah, and I will tell you, just as somebody who shoots with David a lot, his discipline, his focus, his drive, it's pretty unparalleled. And you can tell just in the way that he sets up his room here. And, let's admit it, this is going to be an incredible room to go through. It's got toys, it's got room, it's got everything that a reloader wishes they had when they can set up something. So let's just take a look here for a second and, walk me through, kind of what is your process. Why did you lay out the room you did? So when we look at something like your scales and your press here, is there a reason? Is there a reason that the press is over there? Is there a reason you got your cleaning bench? Like when you set this up, which wasn't too long ago, what did you do to kind of map it out?
Wow, that's a big question. So if I think about it for a second, what I really wanted to do was give myself space for the different parts of what I end up doing. So if we look over here, this is easy. You can see my different cleaning rods, all the cleaning stuff, anything that I'm going to do with the bolts or the action is all here. This is actually my newest rifle that I'm taking to Indiana next week. So
and
this is
you
going to be...
guys can't see this wood. I mean, this is just a sexy stock.
Yeah, Will McCloskey at Sirius did that. So I actually have matching rifles now for both of my 284s that are very similar in terms of the Spirit of Destiny design as well as the wood pattern.
And all your actions are Borden, right?
Yep, I've got 4 identical Borden actions. 2 are on 284s, one's on a 6.5 Creedmoor, and then one is more of an experimental gun. And then Collis for all of those. But this section right here allows me to do all my tinkering. I still need to figure out a better stand, hence why I've got bolts on it right here. But this whole area here allows me to stand back here and do all my cleaning. I tend to goof around and look through this device all the time, so I have it open and ready and available. And then as I keep moving this way, this is really where I do most of the stuff. And I know, John, you're familiar with this, but I've got the Mark 7 auto drive on top of connected to a Dillon 750. So I run all of my ammunition through here, whether it's for a random Tuesday night or whether I'm reloading for a big match like Nationals in 2 weeks. I send everything through here. So I moved this room and set it up specifically around here. And so, for example, you can see how I've got the bullet feeder there, the case feeder. I have this ready to go to charge and load ammo right here. But then if you look over here, I've got all the other ones. So for example, and I'll show you my sheet in a second. Step 1 is depriming and sizing. So I'll just put that tool head in here. But the way I'm configured right now, I stand right here. I've got 2 different auto drop Sartoriuses running. And through here, I can actually change my dwell time. So I've got it hanging at the top for 3 seconds is what that does. So if I do that and I hit, for example, single cycle, it pauses here for 3 seconds. That gives me enough time to grab the cup holder, drop it in, put it back in the pan, and then the next scale is almost ready to go. So I end up running single cycle quite a bit, only because I want to use my scales.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When I'm doing like precise ammo.
Okay. And so if you've got that kick-ass machine, what do you use the Hornady for then?
This is my original thing. I had no idea what I was doing 5 years ago. I went online and this little Hornady kit was like, here's everything you need with their stupid little scale, and it gave me my first set of calipers that came with it. So I literally had no idea what I was doing, but this is what I used for my first 2 years before I finally moved to a progressive.
Okay.
But here, like for example, I brought a bunch of ammo from V Squared back that ended up having more powder in it than I needed. So I'll pull bullets here to take some of the powder out. And my good old buddy Eric Cortina hasn't given me his demo on tipping bullets. I just tipped 700 bullets by hand manually right here last week getting ready for nationals. So I do all my tipping here, any bullet pulling, just random little things. But
it looks like you have a decapper back there just for randomly popping around here or there.
Random thing, but I rarely use this except for those two activities.
Okay, but so, if you could eliminate it, you would.
Totally.
Yeah.
If I could, I would.
But it'll probably stick around if nothing else for bullet pulling and random primer popping.
Yeah, and then if you look down here at the bottom, I have, I think, 2,000 pieces of 284 brass I'm going through right now, and you can see, fire formed, if they've been annealed, if they've been sized, tumbled, primed, or if they're ready to go. And I literally start at one side, and actually I was going to share this with you, John. So for example, here's my current process. So here's everything that I do, and you can see I anneal to begin with, dirty brass. I know a lot of people are going to say, really? You put dirty brass into your amp? I do. I put that first tool head on, deprime, full-length size. Manually, I still have to, I stainless steel tumble manually. I trim and chamfer with my Gerard manually. Then I put the tool head on it that's now, and I do those 4.
Nice.
My goal is actually to have as minimum steps as possible.
Yeah, so that brings up an interesting point. There's really 2 kinds of reloaders, that I've come across. There's people that reload to shoot and people that shoot to reload. And, somebody that is part of my Patreon, really kind of brought that home to me. What kind of reloader are you?
Oh, I'm definitely a shooter, and if I could, I'd actually try to outsource as much of this as I can. And that's why you'll find I've tried to find a way to get rid of or gain time back. Like, so for example, if I'm going to process and just size brass, I can dump 100 pieces in there. Literally, I use the one shot, the gallon Ziploc bag, shake it in there, throw it in there. And if I hit run, I can size an entire box in 6 minutes, and I can walk away and don't have to spend any time doing it.
So for you, it's about minimizing touches on the brass.
Touching brasses, getting rid of stuff that I don't need, and same thing with the Amp Mate. It's got a couple little hiccups in it.
Yeah.
But if I throw a box in there and put the code in, I can walk away and go do something else.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, it kicks out a piece. For some reason, I don't have the settings here perfectly. It gets hung up, but. Yeah. I can walk away. So my goal has always been minimizing time.
Yeah.
There's a certain level of pride around making sure all my ammunition is perfect and dialed in and I feel good about it.
Yeah.
But if I could get rid of all of this, I would. But I'd have to have the same guarantee that it's loaded the way I load.
Sure. That totally makes sense. I
was going to show you as a comparison.
Yeah, let's take a look.
I talked about this a lot. I used to have 16 steps when I was reloading back in the day. Now I'm only down to 10. If I could find a way to get this down to 5 or 6, again, it's just all about saving time.
Yeah, no, that 100% makes sense. And, I think to some degree that's, something that you and I over the years have talked about. And I think that's kind of where it's, really become apparent that, you are a man of focus. And when you find a process that works for you, you stick with it. You don't monkey around with it. You might test within certain ranges, but you really do seem to find that when something works, you just leave it, right?
Sure.
And is that hard for you, or do you find that easy? Because I know there's a lot of reloaders who say, well, like if I could just eke out this much more and this much more, but how much do you find yourself doing that really changes anything?
Well, I have this conversation with people all the time. I'm actually not that smart of a guy. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a statistician, I'm not an engineer. So what I find is if I can get one piece of the process to work and it demonstrates good results, I have no interest or time in testing anything else. And I usually use, we shoot every Tuesday night, so I get plenty of opportunities to do a relay at 600 yards, and my average ES on a Tuesday night is between 12 and 20. If for some reason that number was way greater than 20, I know I've got something going on with my process, my brass, my equipment, but I haven't changed any of those that go into that recipe for like 3 years.
Yeah.
So I have no need to go search for the next nth level of experiment to try because the recipe seems to work right now.
And I think we've talked about this. When it comes to reloading, you're not an N+1 guy, right? It's not, like you said, it's not looking for the next nth of anything. You take what works, you implement it, and you move on. And really, I think that shows because it's allowed you to focus on your shooting, not on your time in the reloading room, right?
That's a good description.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, so I know you reload so you can shoot, but you still have to have a favorite process in here, right? Like, is there something in here that you at least get some joy out of that kind of makes you smile every time you use it? Is there a particular tool that you just kind of go, man, I don't love reloading or taking all my time reloading, but I really don't mind watching this thing work?
Yeah, I wish I had a favorite toy, but I'm going to have to say whatever gives me the most time savings possible.
Okay.
So I'm going to still go with
the auto drive.
Mark 7 auto drive because it saves so much time.
And you'll notice that David's got the Mark 7 set up with literally just about every option. So you can see up here we've got the bullet feeder, we've got the case feeder. He's got, like he said, the powder funnel over here. And the nice thing about it is the base, if you've watched any of my videos with the Mark 7, you've noticed there's nothing to bolt down with the Mark 7. It is literally self-stable. So any of this workspace that he's got, he could, if he had to, move this around a little bit, even though he's given himself plenty of room. Let's talk about the Sartoriuses real quick, because you always see debates online. Is the FX 120 better? Is the Sartorius better? What made you choose the Sartorius over the FX, and what do you think, having used it for several years now?
I jumped right in and bought the Sartorius only because it seemed like it was the highest end of the stack, but as you've heard me talk about already, this third decimal place drives me crazy because I know from doing testing and talking to other people, technically, this decimal place doesn't matter. This one probably doesn't matter either. But that little OCD in me, that when I see that little decimal place, I've gotten good enough to where I put extra little kernels in here. And if I see it, 12 thousandths over or under, I know exactly how big of a kernel to drop in there. That's just me. I know I don't need to do it.
But it's only because you can see the difference.
It's because I could see it. I tried to run a Sartorius with an FX once, and because they conflicted with how many decimal places, I couldn't do it.
Fair enough.
These are very repeatable. I've never had an issue. I had my countertop guy make me nice stones. I've got these completely separate than any other workbench I'm working on, so these things are rock solid and stable once they've warmed up, that I know I'm getting a clean drop with these.
Nice. So, this is, we'll just call it a top level cave. This has got, you can even see he's got a fully motorized 21st century neck turning tool down there. He's got the best of everything. And I'm not going to lie. I knew that coming in. David is a person that believes in buying the right tool, regardless of cost, that helps him save the time and money. But when you look at all your tools here, so you've got everything from your amp to your Giraud to your Mark 7. If there was a reason, I don't know what the reason would be, but if there was a reason why somebody said, hey, look, you have to replace one of your tools, or you have to replace all of your tools with cheaper tools, but there's one tool that you can keep regardless of price. What's the one tool that you would absolutely not replace if they said you can keep one tool, but you need to dumb down everything else?
I would say this one tool is both a blessing and a curse. It would be the Giraud trimmer over there.
Which is baby in the corner over here.
This guy right here it's one of my last steps on that I have to do manually. I have to touch every single piece of brass to put it in there, but the precision that comes out of it in terms of I just did these. But that beautiful chamfer, which is the last thing that touches your bullet that comes out of it, this is unbelievable. So I'd never give up that tool, even though I hate doing it because it's manual.
Yeah, and we've played around with some ways to auto feed it, but it's still not a perfect process. So, I think that's, I'm guessing that would be your ultimate dream, is to automate that process fully.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. Here are my two tools on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Oh, okay. Well, that's where we were going next.
So this at the time, I thought this was the most beautiful manual item. I have not used this in 4 years, but it's bolted to this board. I don't have a reason to sell it, so I haven't used this in 4 years. And as you know, about 9 months ago, I gave up neck turning completely, and my results have been the same, if not better. So I actually never plan on using this again, at least for my 284 chambered rifles.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, so there you have it. Those are the tools that at one time were probably the finest that you could buy, but are never touched anymore. And then you have the one tool that if he had to give up everything else, he would not give up. So let's just talk about a couple other things real quick. When you got started, or even a little bit further in, what's the one process that you really struggled to kind of wrap yourself around in terms of perfecting it? Whether it's trimming or turning or seating bullets or pointing, like what is it for you that you kind of struggled with the most?
I don't know if I use the word struggle, but what took a lot of experimentation, and you know this, and all the guys we shoot with on Tuesday know this, but I went through actually a pretty deep dive around using, and again, don't laugh at me, I use bushings in every single one of my sizing dies, but I bought consecutive series bushings. I have, tens of different pin gauges, and trying to find the right recipe between this size and this size so that I could always get that consistent neck tension I wanted. This actually took a lot of work. But after doing that, I haven't adjusted this recipe in over 3 years.
Because that's kind of a dance, right? Like, I mean, I know as well as you do, and we talk about this all the time, and it's something that we cover in our reloading class, which is, there's sort of this dance between how do you size the neck down, then how do you bring it back out, so that you're minimally affecting the brass, but still giving really consistent results on that bullet release, right? And when it comes to that, do you feel like you lose anything from not having a gauge or a feel? Like even with the Mark 7, you're never actually feeling any of your bullet seating or anything, and so there's obviously a big camp on people that say, well, you need to know exactly what the force is, stuff like that. Have you been through that stage, and did you just find that it just didn't matter to you?
Yeah, I think you're right, because I identified an error in my process last year. And what I would say is my final step in the entire process, so I could seat my bullets all the way to finish on this, and I've got a micrometer to be able to do it. But since I travel to a lot of my matches, I fly to a lot of matches, I always load them long, and I bring this with me to any match I go to. So when something goes through here, and I pull the bullets out and I do my final seating, and I used to goof around with one of those K&M presses with the gauge on it to measure the number. And what I found is if all of this is going right, this feel or seeing the number on those gauges were always the same. Here's where I found an error last year, and this was a big learning lesson for me. Let's see if I can give you an example. Here's a piece of box of brass that's in the back. It's been fired 12 times, and what you'll always notice is I had to write on here a different neck size bushing, because before I knew that number, I left all my recipe the same, I'd send them through, and then all of a sudden the bullets were just dropping right in. And I was like, where did my neck tension go? Well, you fire them 12 times, anneal every time, trim every time, and it turned out that these necks were thinning out so much, I actually had to shrink down the bushing size. But all of that showed up just by feeling this, and I went, I no longer have the same tension I thought. So that was a learning lesson for me, and part of the reason why I threw out 8 boxes of brass, and these ones are still doing well, but they've been fired 12 times, so I don't bring these to matches.
Those are like for testing or not fireforming.
Not even testing. Those are for like goofing around on a Tuesday.
Just totally goofing around. All right. We've shown, obviously I showed the wall of medals and stuff like that. You've had quite a bit of accomplishments, but when you look back at when you first started, you've been shooting F-class since about, 2014? 2013?
This is my 5th season.
Fifth actual season, 2016.
Yep.
So when you first started, what was like the first goal that you set for yourself? Like, not just, I want to do something, but was it, hey, I just want to shoot a clean target? Was it, I want to attend a big match? Like, what was kind of the first goal as you went, hey, I really love this discipline. Here's the first goal I'm going to set for myself.
I I tend to be one of those guys that believes in constant growth and learning and curiosity. So I've never actually set a goal in the beginning. It was always to make sure I was improving. If I think back to the first night I showed up at Tri-County on that 600-yard line with some crappy 308 rifle with box ammo, and people were like, wow, you brought a box of cardboard ammo with you, and my target was this big. That's when I quickly realized there's something here. I can get competitive with it. I can learn. And then it's always been, how do I refine that game a little bit more? So, the only goal I have now is Nationals is in 2 weeks, and I'd like to be on the podium again.
Nice. And to date, what do you kind of, in the whole thing, whether it's an achievement on a match or a personal best or something, what's sort of the highest achievement to yourself personally that you've had so far?
In shooting, I guess maybe I'm fortunate here in the Northwest that I have friends like you, our group at Tri-County, but shooting with the Lapua Brex Borden guys, a couple of them live here in the Northwest that have been great help in terms of helping to refine what I'm doing. So that's been a great part that I've really enjoyed. And every time we go to a big match, it's nice to see one of us doing well, and I'd like to be there. Nice.
So are you all ready for Nationals?
I have my bullets tipped. I still need to move all those boxes to this size, but I've got.
So you still got a little work ahead of you.
I've got one more 1,000-yard test for 2 rifles. One rifle here. This Thursday morning, I'm going out to Douglas Ridge.
Yeah, we'll both be out there. He's getting ready for Nationals.
Test.
Yeah.
And then once I have the results from this, I can send them all through and load my 600 rounds.
That's awesome. We help a lot of people, obviously. We've been fortunate to get help ourselves. We try to pass it on to other people in our group. When we see new shooters come to the line and people come up to you, obviously they know who you are, they see your achievements, they look to you for support. What do you think the best question people typically ask is, and what do you think the more like doesn't matter question is that people come to you with? A new shooter who says, hey, David, I'm interested in this and this. What's the thing where you go, okay, this guy's really asking the right question and this guy really needs some help getting on the right track?
I think we have a good example in our group, CJ, who just started shooting about a year ago, and he's just made High Master, cleaning targets. He came to it with the right approach that was like, tell me what you're doing, tell me why it works that way. He would put it into application and he'd immediately see results. And it was like the ABCs of it. How do you find a load? How do you do a seating depth test? How do you know where you're at in that window of either one of those tests? When I get questions like that, I know someone's on the right track they want to find the most precise load and ammo that they can make.
Yeah.
A lot of times when I get these weird random questions that they either want to think about a Wildcat cartridge.
Oh, we don't know anybody that does that.
Yeah, and I don't know how to do that. Or if they haven't spent enough time to go back to the beginning and they don't even know what powder to use or what charge range, and then they're already working on like the nth degree on trying to work on some little piece here and they haven't gotten the basics done.
Okay, so building blocks thing. You kind of see the guys who want to take the steps forward, and then there's guys who just want to jump to the end.
True.
Kind of sounds like it. Okay. Very cool. What would you say you've got? So you've got Nationals coming up. Hopefully we're going to shoot Burger, this coming year.
Yeah.
You've achieved, so many things with setting records with your team. And for those that aren't on a team, like I'm not on a team per se, but when you go to these matches and you see these teams, it's amazing to watch them work. It's amazing to see the team work that actually goes into it. And like David said, I've watched these guys interact with each other. They really do support each other. But for people that aren't on teams, there's still so many people at these matches that are willing to help. Especially, I can't speak to other disciplines, but I'd say F-class, and you've shot other disciplines. Would you say F-class sort of is one of those disciplines where you're always going to have some people that won't share, but by and large, F-class is sort of one of those disciplines where everybody wants to see everybody improve?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The camaraderie with all the guys. Yeah, so I've flown to 5 different matches so far this year, even through the tail end of COVID, and it's great seeing all the guys that are from Texas or Florida or the upper Midwest, and everyone is always willing to help and share. And even if you have a problem with your rifle and you need to borrow somebody's to finish a relay, it's the camaraderie is unbelievable.
Yeah, boy, how many times have we seen that? Somebody goes, "Oh, I've got an extra gun, I've got ammo loaded. Here, just shoot it." And that's what got me into my custom guns that I've got, and I've seen it happen. David's done it for people, I've done it for people. I can't tell you how many matches we've been at where somebody said, "Hey, I've got an extra gun and ammo. Here, just get out there and do it." And I think that really strikes a chord with people about F-Class and what kind of people it attracts. So, last question that I've got. What's your, somebody comes up and doesn't know what to ask you, what's the first thing that you typically say to a new shooter that comes to our discipline and says, "Wow, this looks cool," and they say, "I don't know anything about it"? What's sort of your first, bits of advice for somebody?
This happens a lot. I try to get a gauge of what aspirations do they have. Are they trying to jump into big matches and compete at the highest level, or are they just trying to have fun? Because I know I fell victim to, I started with a 6.5 Creedmoor tactical setup. Then I moved to a 6.5 Creedmoor with an F-open stock. And if somebody would have said, "Do you want to try to compete?" I probably would have skipped over both of those steps. But for someone who just wants to go out there and have a good time, that's a perfectly acceptable starting place. So if I summarize that, trying to get an understanding of what they ultimately want to do, because then you can back into, can you save money on different components or equipment, or should you skip over some of those things? And then it's really just starting at the basics and helping them get on the right page.
Excellent. Well, David, you've been incredibly generous. I can't thank you enough for letting us into your shop here. And, hopefully this is a series that we'll be able to really see a wide range, and I have to be honest, a lot of this was David's idea. I'm fortunate that David and I travel a lot. We drive to a lot of matches. We fly to matches. We spend a lot of time together, and, we bounce a lot of ideas off each other. And this was something at one point where David said, "John, once COVID kind of comes to an end here, it would be great if people could see how other people in our group do things, because we have just a tremendous amount of successful people on target, but they all achieve it a different way. And it doesn't mean you have to do it any one way. And so the ability to come in here and see how David does it compared to how I do it, compared to the next 5 or 10 people that I go to and go to their house, I think you're going to see a lot of similarities in how they approach things, how they want to set up their shops. And you might see different tools and you might see some different processes. But the fact that we can all get to the same result is really a testament to what a reloading room can be and what your mentality towards a reloading room can be. So, David, again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you letting us in and having a glimpse at, what you do here. So
yeah, no problem. Absolutely.
All right. That's it for now. Have a good one. We'll talk later.